If there's one thing I want to get across with my channel or any of my social media platforms is the importance of frequent confession. I hammer home the idea and the thoughts that training and nutrition and developing the virtues of fortitude and temperance are of vital importance, but these are secondary to staying in a state of grace and matching all of our efforts and marrying our efforts in the natural with the supernatural graces that come from living a sacramental life, going to confession frequently, living a pious life, and living a life of ongoing salvation, because salvation is not, as we know as Catholics, a singular event, but an ongoing process that leads to us, God willing, inheriting the beatific vision. And so if we're pursuing all these things in the natural, just for the natural end, then all we become are good pagans. Now, I can't remember if this quote was attributed to G.K. Chesterton or C.S. Lewis or whatever, but this quote rings true in a way. And follow me here. To be a good Christian, one must become a good pagan. But if all we're doing is pursuing the natural, all we are becoming are good pagans. Now, there is a certain element of truth to this that, living like a good pagan, if you will, developing the virtues, having a love for the natural and the creation itself and the development of the body, the development of these virtues, of course, are of vital importance. But these mean nothing. They're not meritorious in God's eyes, certainly, especially when not matched or married to supernatural grace. So here are 8 reasons from Pope Pius XII why frequent confession is necessary. And there's also a reason why, as a prerequisite for all the men that want to work with me, that staying in a state of grace and going to frequent confession, even if you're stumbling, even if you're falling, even if you're, falling into frequent sin, is of vital importance. Otherwise, I just simply won't work with you. But this is not about me. This is about going to confession. And if you haven't been in a while, this is your sign that you got to go. Okay, so many might be asking why I'm holding a piece of paper. Well, it's because I keep my production very simple. I want to try to get out as many videos as I can and provide good value for people. So I don't really edit my videos. It's just a straight train of thought, stream of consciousness, if you will. All my Dream Theater fans know that reference. But here are 8 reasons why attending frequent confession is important. And this is from Mystici Corporis by Pope Pius XII. So the confession of venial sins is the ultimate form of accountability. Pope Pius XII recommended it to ensure more rapid progress day by day in the path of virtue. I want to give a shout out to my man Will Noland, who shared this on his X account months ago, and I have it saved, and I've shared it many, many times with clients and what have you. So here are the 8 reasons. Number 1, genuine self-knowledge is increased. The more that I go to confession, the more frequently I go to confession, especially for venial sins, because by the grace of God, I'm not really falling into, frequent mortal sin or mortal sin really, I think, at all. I know I'm scrupulous and tend to think that I am, but the more that I go for my venial sins, the more self-awareness I have, more self-knowledge I have around even the small things. And again, this is not to reduce venial sins as a matter of, it's not really a big deal, because all of these things are an affront to God. So I do have a genuine self-knowledge. You'll have a genuine self-knowledge when you go frequently. Number 2, Christian humility grows. This is one thing. We're talking about the softening of hearts. There's nothing quite like going in and humiliating yourself and convicting yourself in front of a priest. And as a result of this humiliation, which I think is a prerequisite to true Christian humility, humility grows. And Lord knows a guy like me needs that. And Lord knows that you, if you're watching this, you need it as well. Number 3, bad habits are corrected. There's something that I really noticed the more time that lapses in between confessional visits. I recently went on vacation with my family, and it had been 2 weeks since I've been to confession, and my children got sick, so I wasn't able to attend. So it had been 3 weeks. The more distance I put between myself and the confessional, the more I can sense myself giving myself more rope to sin, more excuse to sin. And there's a true element of truth to what Father Ripperger said, that sin makes you stupid. You tend to give yourself more rope, more allowance, more justification for sin. It's easier to fall into sin when you have more distance between yourself and the confessional. This is why I think a minimum of going twice per month, if not weekly, is recommended. So bad habits absolutely are corrected. there's a conviction, there's a sorrow for sin, there's a sensitivity to sin that comes with frequent confessional visits. And that's one of the vital reasons I continue to go and why you should go frequently as well. Number 4, spiritual neglect and tepidity are resisted. When I am going frequently, there is a conviction and a pull toward more prayer, more piety, more practice in my own life. Because the fact of the matter is, prayer is arduous, and prayer these days, we've all been kind of manipulated into thinking it's like feminine behavior, but it is arduous, it's difficult, it is lifting the soul toward God. And oftentimes, I don't want to pray the rosary, I don't want to pray, I don't want to do what I have to do because it's difficult. Well, going to frequent confession ensures that you are being drawn toward God and that there is this sense of urgency to fulfill or to practice the virtue of justice. And then sub virtue of justice is religion. And so giving to God what he is rightly owed by us, and that is prayer and our time together. So I think it was St. Augustine that said that if you don't pray, you are not going to be saved. And St. Thomas Aquinas said to fulfill the virtue of justice in prayer, we have to be praying at least 15 minutes a day, which I think is not that long. That's one rosary. So guys, we could all be doing better, and frequent confessional visits will certainly convict you in such a way. Number 5, the conscience is purified. This is a big one. I, again, touching on an earlier point, I feel a heightened sense of sensitivity and sorrow over sin, that my conscience, once it gets kind of wiped clean, when I'm back in a state of grace and I receive absolution, there is this hyper awareness of my conscience. There's this hyper awareness of my thoughts, my actions, my words, in a way that I've never attained anywhere else, and I don't think it can be attained anywhere else. So the conscience is purified, and there is like a renewed sense of your sin, renewed reality of how wretched you are, which should drive us back to the foot of the cross and back to the confessional. Number 6, the will is strengthened. My ability to restrain my tongue, to restrain myself from wrath or from pride or from any number of these cardinal vices, is absolutely strengthened every time I leave the confessional. And the more distance, again, I put between myself and the confessional, the more I feel my will weakening, the more I feel myself being drawn toward my concupiscible appetite, my appetite that tends towards sin. And so if you're struggling with a weak will, a will that is easily swayed, this is another reason, my friend, that you need confession. You can't do it on your own. You can only white knuckle things to a certain degree, to a certain point, but the rest of that has to be filled with the supernatural graces that come from absolution and the sacrament itself. Number 7, a salutary self-control is attained. And again, these two things are they're similar, right? So the more my will is strengthened, the more I have a sense of self-control over my tongue, my thoughts, my actions, my words. And so there's something that is kind of intangible, but that actualizes itself in my day-to-day life with regards to my will, how I approach other people, how I approach my family, how I approach myself, how I approach social media posts. And so there is this element of temperance and, well, all of the virtues really that are strengthened and heightened under the light of the sacrament of confession and receiving that absolution. I know this sounds like I'm repeating myself, but I'm just trying to hammer home the point of how vitally important this is to our souls to be going frequently. And number 8, and it kind of all ties back down to this, grace is increased in the virtue of the sacrament itself. So guys, you're struggling with pride, you're struggling with lust, you're struggling with self-abuse, any number of things. You can't do it on your own, okay? There is a strong element of grace that is bestowed within the sacrament itself. And so if I'm going through a particularly tough time, and I find myself going to actually confession more frequently these days, weekly, because I'm really aiming to destroy pride in my own life, destroy wrath in my own life, my ability to just be impatient and angry, whether that be with my family or with other people. I've got a big mouth. My tongue can be a whip. Sometimes I can be quite hardened and harsh. And I certainly don't want to, destroy all elements of myself that make me myself, because I think there are good components of being, outspoken and hammering home the truth. But there's a fundamental lack of charity sometimes within myself and how I convey these messages, just for the sake of engagement or reaction, whether that be in my men's group or with my coaching or any number of situations. So I'm going more frequently to sort of combat this pride in my own life. And so it doesn't matter what you are struggling with, okay? You need the graces from the confessional to help you achieve this. And all of this advice, all of this stuff that myself or anybody in, this space, if you will, are recommending is all for naught if you're not in a state of grace. And again, this is also to hammer home a point. Let us not play and roll the dice with our salvation. If it's been some time since you've been to the confessional, Christ is there waiting for you to bestow those graces upon you, to forgive you. And so if any of you are struggling with, how to put together a confession, I did a general confession last May before I received the sacrament of confirmation as a lapsed Catholic. So there was, a lot of nervousness and anxiety around being away from the confessional for 20 plus years, but there was no shame in it. And I was there for 45 minutes. I printed out, multiple sheets of paper confessing all these sins that I have, gone unconfessed for many years. And I'm going to leave my favorite examination of conscience in the description below. So if you haven't been to confession in a long time, this is your sign. Go to confession, and it could be been a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years, all that stuff. Too long. Okay, Christ is waiting for you in the confessional booth. He's waiting to forgive you. He's waiting to bestow those amazing graces that you don't get anywhere else. And plus, there's an element to make it very simple. You can't go wrong living your life where at any given moment you could die and feel okay about your spiritual state. At any given moment, you could receive the sacrament of the Eucharist, because that is the source and summit of our faith, as you know. So you're in a state of grace. You can receive Jesus in the Eucharist more frequently, and I can't imagine what is more important than that. I can't fathom there isn't anything that's more important than that. So, guys, if these 8 reasons didn't bang it home, maybe this will. Don't roll the dice with your salvation. Don't roll the dice with you inheriting the beatific vision and being with Jesus and in his presence for eternity. Go to confession. That's all I wanted to say. Guys, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. If you're a guy looking for fitness coaching or mentorship around, the cultivation of said virtues and whatnot, I'll leave my application in the description box below as well. But, all this stuff, that doesn't matter. What matters is getting in a state of grace, staying in a state of grace, and continuing to go to receive the sacrament of reconciliation, and then Jesus in the Eucharist. That's all. Glory to Jesus Christ. We'll catch you in the next one.